Welcome to the Northeast Kingdom Voice. I'm your host, Scott Wheeler. Today's guest is history researcher and author Kathleen Monroe, and she's here to talk about her research and writing on the history of the community of Barnett. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Scott.
Right. We're kind of in the same business. As in, I record the history of the Northeast Kingdom, and you are recording the history of the community of Barnett. And you know what? I bet you there's a lot of Northeast Kingdom residents who don't even know where the community of Barnett is. Where is it?
Well, first, I'll begin by instructing how to say the name of the town. And I am a retired speech language pathologist, so bear with me. We live in the town of Barnett, and we say it's Barnett, darn it. So it's not Barnett. And in fact, Barnett is the only town in so named in the United States. There are some Barnetts, but they are named for different places for different reasons. And Barnett is located just south of St. Johnsbury, and it includes 7 neighborhoods and 5 villages.
Right.
So all the way from Passumpsic to the Reigate border.
As a speech and language person, I suspect you would have a field day with my Northeast Kingdom dialect.
So much, just I mean, we do have a dialect here in Vermont, and that was one of the things that intrigued me when I first moved here was people tended to say things differently than where I came from, which was Cleveland, Ohio.
Oh,
That was 48 or 49 now years ago. But yeah, I was immediately attuned to the difference in accent. Like I could stand in line in the quick stop and not understand the guys standing in front of me who were loggers, and they're talking among themselves. And if they had asked for a summary, they would have gotten zip. I have no idea what they were saying.
Well, here's the one thing that it's said about a lot of Vermonters is we take out T's, but we put R's in where they don't even belong.
Don't even belong there.
And it's like the community of Barton. Barton turns into Barton.
Barton, yeah.
And Swanton turns into Swanton.
Yep.
We drop the T's, add I's. Now randomly add R's to wherever we want to put them.
Or drop them all together. I think the most fascinating thing that I ever heard was, like I was describing to some teachers in the teacher room. I worked in schools, hospitals, Visiting Nurses Association, the whole gamut. And I had a private practice both in Rutland and White River Junction. And the most interesting thing I ever heard was, so don't I and so can't I. So I would say something like, I can go ride my bike this weekend, and I would get, oh, so can't I. And I was like, you can't? And so don't I. That's a very common to Vermont, and I haven't found it anywhere else.
Well, here's the other thing we do, and they say it's a mix of, they say it's because of misunderstanding with the Quebec language and the French language, and I've tried to stop it. I've tried is when your pipes freeze, so many people will say, I had to unthaw my pipes.
Yes.
And it doesn't, that means you're freezing your pipes.
Right.
If you actually thaw your pipes.
Yes, you do.
Unthawing means to freeze them. So there. So why? So you're from Cleveland. Now, what brought you to? So your family's from Barnett?
My Barnett, darn it.
Barnett.
My family is from Cleveland, and I moved here with a gentleman. And that was back in 72, 3, 4, in that range. Yeah, around 74. And that's what brought us to Vermont. We settled in Pittsford, which is just north of Rutland. For those who might not be familiar with it, it's where the police academy is.
Yeah.
And then in the 80s, we moved to the Upper Valley, to Thetford, and then eventually to Fairleigh. And then another gentleman is the reason why I'm in Barnett. So I settled here in about 2013 or 14. And the first thing that struck me was that there is a big sign that says Jacques Cousteau made his first dive.
Yeah.
And that is posted at our town beach. And I thought, wow, that's really something. I need to find out more about that. So I started talking to the folks with whom we were friends here in Barnett. And every single one of them told me a different story about the dive of Jacques Cousteau. And that bothers me. I'm a person who likes to be accurate, which might have led to that speech language pathology degree. I'm very keen on accuracy. And so I started looking into that story in particular and found out much more about the camp to which Jacques Cousteau went in his 11th year in 1920, 21, somewhere in there. And it turned out that the story was so intriguing, and I was like jumping up every time I found some new fact through federal records, as it turned out. I was eager to share it both with Frank, my husband, and with all my friends. And they took to calling me the professor. So anyway, it was too good a story to let go. And that's what started me on building the Legends of Barnett, Vermont, because there were stories to be told. And we also have a published history book that was written chiefly in 1918, published in 1923. And of course, through the years, as with any book, errors were found. And as you can imagine, they didn't have computers back then.
Right.
Yeah, so things were not exactly at their fingertips. I took the opportunity to reach out to the community, which is the way that Frederick Wells constructed that 1918 to 23 book, for their recollections. But I have the advantage with the internet and with libraries that we have in Vermont and elsewhere to verify a lot of the information that I was given by people.
Right.
But I wanted to involve the community. I wanted them to be part of building the story. So I used Facebook a lot in order to message people or put up a post asking, for instance, lately it's been about dance halls in the Northeast Kingdom in general, and in Barnett in particular. And then I go and interview people either in person, on the phone, or however, via computer. Sometimes we just chat back and forth, and I get their stories. And I'm talking to people all over the country in order to gather these stories.
Absolutely. Now, you're probably on the Northeast Kingdom Roots site.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to tell you, because I know Audrey real well. I consider her a friend and a colleague. That site is a treasure trove for people doing research, because it isn't necessarily just the photos, but it's the connections you make on there. Like sometimes I can find people who are who remember things that I just would not have found.
Right. Oh my gosh, yes. And this, I'm finding that this is the time to capture the memories of those people. Many of them, because I'm looking at things historically, many of them are the last who are holding, the last of a generation or generations who are holding memories that have been passed down orally but not recorded anywhere. And to get to those people while they are still sentient and able to convey that story is, well, as you know, is absolutely of the utmost import.
Right. No, that's very true. And some older people are actually getting on the internet. I've had two people over the years who contacted me at over 100 years old. Like one of the people who used to contact me just died, and I believe he was 104. And
Uh-huh.
I've got to give some of these well-seasoned people credit for going from crank up phones to the internet. And yeah, they're so what is your first book?
My first book is Legends of Barnet, Vermont.
Right.
Here it is. And that is the one that I built because I arrived here. I retired in 2015 from my long practice as a speech language pathologist. And when I moved here, I'm always curious about what I see in the town. And so not only was there a sign about Jacques Cousteau making his first dive, but there were also 3 Presbyterian churches. And we're a town of about 1,650 people. I wondered why a town would need 3 Presbyterian churches. And so that was probably the next thing that I started looking into, which led me to the discovery that this particular town, Barnet, Vermont, was settled by Scottish Presbyterians, and they didn't always agree with one another. And thus, they would have a disagreement that led them to start yet another church in a new location. I ended up turning up 4 Presbyterian churches operating all at the same time in this tiny town. And each one of them had been separated by some really little argument. Like, I think one of the sayings is, well, one of them broke off from the other because one believed in the Psalms of David and the other believed in David's Psalms. I mean, it was just.
No, that doesn't surprise me, because I do know, I was talking to one old fella, and he's now gone, down in St. Johnsbury, and he said they had a very similar thing happen with their denomination, where they, you must be subscribed to, what is it, newspapers.com.
Yes.
That is a researcher's dream. I wish they were able to go up, more, because a lot of the papers are only, if they're still going, we can only access them up to like the 1960s.
Mm-hmm.
But but on the other hand, it's a great resource. Back in the old days, when I first started the journal, typically it required me to go down to Montpelier, where the archives were, and go through everything. Now you just get on it, and it's amazing.
It is amazing. And what's also amazing, Scott, is how you learn over time how to use it, how to use newspapers. Because at first you think it's just going to grab everything that has your search term in it, and yet you find that you might have to just look at 1900 or just look at 1901, or you might not be able to take a chunk like 1900 to 1925, tell me all about whatever. You might have to narrow it down and be extremely patient.
No.
Yeah.
That is it. You have to play with the search, even the search words
The
sometimes,
terms.
right? Because sometimes the word, depends on what you're researching. Like for example, I've been doing something on wrestling, but in other times wrestling the term was grappling.
Yes,
And
exactly.
so you have to play with those. You have to play with your search terms a little bit.
You sure do.
Yeah. But
Yeah.
but I like my wife who passed away in July, I used to tell her I could get rid of certain things to do with my business, but I'd go out of business before I get rid of newspapers.com. Did you find some good information about Barnett? Yeah, did I say that right?
You did.
Yeah,
you
good.
did good job.
You know what? I'll probably every time I see that word in writing, that town in writing, or I hear it, I'm going to be thinking, Kathleen said, okay, Barnett. No, Barnett.
Barnett, yeah. Darn it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what have you found? Like, is there anything really fascinating when you were looking through these newspaper online and that you said, wow, I didn't know that?
Oh, that happened all the time. But the first thing that I learned was that the what was then known as the Bureau of Investigation, it was the precursor to our FBI, was involved with the camp to which Jacques Cousteau went. Right. And I found that through another resource, which is you can get acquisition by payment. Once again, this is where these nobody's making money writing books. This is a hobby that costs a great deal of money. I stumbled upon something that suggested that there was in Barnett an investigation going on of these German professors. This is right before, it's during World War I and right before our entry into World War I, during a time, unfortunate time in our country, but not unprecedented, I must say. When the people of America decided to turn on Germans in general. And in fact, regular naturalized Germans living among us their children oftentimes went to schools where the instruction was in German and English. And they wiped out the opportunity for those people to have their children instructed in German because, of course, those Germans were nasty and they were our enemy. So the gentlemen who started the camp were both Germans, one a naturalized citizen and the other one a professor as well, college professor in German, who came here and met each other at a girls' camp that's still in existence in Newberry, Vermont, and decided to start a camp for children of German parentage whose parents wanted them to have an immersive opportunity to speak German. So the camp was a German-speaking camp to begin with, and that brought a great deal of suspicion because the people of Barnett and a few surrounding communities, Danville, St. Johnsbury, Peacham, thought that there was nefarious activity at the camp and that the purpose of the camp was not to instruct children or bring them to the waterfront and let them dive, but was to try to ferry information from the mountaintops of Barnet via teletype to Germany. They were sharing secrets. So Americans at the time were intrigued by, well, they first had this animosity toward the Germans, and second, they had the Bureau of Investigation trying to encourage them to use their agents to discover things that were going on that might be illegal. And that drew a lot of agents to Barnet. And I had a story.
Right.
And the people of Barnet were pretty, they were divided, of course. And the minister at one of the Presbyterian churches was trying to keep a lid on things because their rioting was suggested and going down and burning the camp. And there was all kinds of stuff going on. And I with access to those FBI records, I was able to uncover an incredible story well before Jacques put foot in Barnet.
And it's always, there's so many people doing great research on some of the topics we've written about, but it's always nice when you find something new. And sometimes, one thing that I sometimes run into, especially with community leaders in air quotes, is they mistake history with being PR writing, as in they want only the fluffy, nice stuff written about. And sometimes history is not always happy and fluffy. I've run onto that, and I make no apologies. Like, I've written about the Ku Klux Klan in the Northeast Kingdom. And, when I write about things like that, it isn't that I take pride in it. It's history. It's what it is.
It is indeed. I've ran into the same thing writing about the Hells Angels. Yeah. At one point in 1968, the Hells Angels came into Barnet. Yeah. Well, actually, they came into St. Johnsbury, where they thought they were going to find a place to stay for the night. This is a whole group from Lowell, Massachusetts. Yeah. And there they met Carlet Bogey, who was a farmer here in Barnet. And they were in a dilemma. They didn't have a place to stay for the night. And he invited them back to Harvey Lake's lakeshore. They took such a liking to their accommodations, which were, of course, extremely rough, and decided that they wanted to purchase a pretty large amount, pretty good acreage in the Roy Farm, Bogey Farm area of Barnet on Harvey Lake. And of course, once again, we have, like we did with the Germans, we have some mixed feelings in town about this. And some, of course, anticipation that there's going to be trouble. Right. And to a man, I heard nothing but good things about the Hells Angels, who came riding into Barnet and stayed. Well, in fact, we're still visiting in the 90s. They were prevented from purchasing the land that they thought they had an opportunity to buy, and which a farmer was eager to sell to them, which was an interesting story in and of itself, because that led to there being a group interested, as they had never been interested before, in zoning regulations. That's what brought zoning regulations to Barnet, was the sudden, we could have these guys here. How can we make it impossible for them?
Now, these stories are in your book, correct?
They are indeed.
That is, I know your books, you only have a limited supply left. Do you still have some for sale?
I do indeed, and I have some still in the closet, which is one of the things I found authors do not want to have is, year after year after year, So I have reprinted the book, I think 4 times in order to satisfy what was an amazing response. You can get the book in St. Johnsbury at the Fairbanks Museum gift shop. You can get it in Lyndonville at the Green Mountain Books. And you can get it at in Danville at Three Ponds Sandwich Shop. And she also, Anna, who runs that, also has local artisans' goods for sale, among them my Legends of Barnet. And you can also buy it from me.
How do they reach out to you?
Well, I can give you my name again and address, and or they can reach out to me through my email address. My name is Kathleen Monroe, Monroe, and my address is 668 Aiken Farm Road, Aiken Farm Road, Barnet, Vermont 05821.
Right.
And my email address, and I am more than happy to receive emails and will answer them promptly, is speakvt, SPEAKVT, at sover.net, SOVER.net. You can also find me on Facebook, Kathleen Monroe and Barnet. And yeah, I think that's about it.
Right. Okay, we only have a couple more minutes. Time flew. So what more would you like to say about your work, your research, your writing, your books, or the future?
Well, the future is going to bring, I hope, a companion volume to Legends, in which I have, my intention was to focus on summer in Barnet, because we are, in air quotes, a resort town. At one point, we had an incredibly active hotel on the lake, all kinds of opportunities for dancing. Some people might be familiar with the pavilion. So I did a whole section. I've written a whole section for the new book on dance halls in the area, and I focused on the pavilion. Seaplanes used to land on Harvey Lake. I have that story. I have the story of many hotels that were in the town. Theater, summer theater. I have an incredible story in there about summer theater. It leads all the way to the TV show To Tell the Truth. Who would have thought?
Yeah.
And and so I'm very eagerly writing and mining the memories of many people. I reach out through a whole lot of Facebook sites. A lot of the I remember growing up in sites and on Facebook, and communicate back and forth with people who have shared. I just love the people of the Northeast Kingdom. They are so willing to share, so eager, so enthusiastic, and they send me photographs to go with the stories and memories of their grandfather, for instance, playing in a band, and they can tell me who the band members were and what each one played. And it's just, it's such a richness in my life to have so many people communicating with me.
Right. Well, our half hour is just about up. So I want to thank you for coming on the show. It was great. I always love having other authors come on, because they know our love and they know our pain. Yeah, and contrary to what some people think, we're not all Stephen. We're not always Stephen King.
Right.
We don't have several homes and such, but we do love what we do.
Yes.
And
passionate. We're passionate.
True. Thank you. Thank you for coming on.
Thanks, Scott. It's been great to talk to you.
And thank you to the viewers for tuning in to another segment of the Northeast Kingdom Voice.